I asked, you guys answered. We are structuring this summer wrap-up in order from all the books I DNF'd to my 5-star books. We are going to be talking about 31 books today, which is absolutely ridiculous. And 15 of them were 4.5 stars or higher for me. I found some of my new all-time favorites of different genres, and I'm so excited to share them all with you. This is probably going to be a pretty hefty video. Grab yourself a little snack, snuggle up with your cat or your dog or your fish or whatever, and let's bring on the books, my friends. We're just gonna start with the books I DNF'd. Now, I'm gonna preamble on this just a smidge. I don't think it is a coincidence that I have found so many amazing books around the time when I started just DNFing books I wasn't feeling. And honestly, this is your sign. Stop reading that book you're not vibing with. I promise it will make your reading experience so much better. Life is way too short for 3-star books, and I just want to make sure that you are all reading books that you love. DNF books. The first one is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. This is about a reclusive man who lives on a weird street with a cat that you get some perspectives from. There's a serial killer and a murder mystery, and someone shows up thinking that this reclusive neighbor is the one who murdered her sister. It is marketed as a gothic. Just because it's set in a house and has an unreliable narrator does not make a book a gothic. I stopped reading this at 30% of the way in. First off, the writing was like really choppy, a lot of periods and like short sentences. It felt like I was watching a horror movie that had jump scares every 30 seconds, and it was like so exhausting to read. It also used my least favorite plot device as a twist, and I figured it out really quickly, which makes it really unenjoyable to read. When I stopped reading this, I actually looked up all the spoilers for the book, and oh my god, I'm so glad I did, because the twist is so stupid. I am in the minority on this book. People fucking love this book. That is so rad for you all. I'm so happy you like it. I hated this. I hated every bit of it. I will probably not pick up another book by this author. If I share what I don't like about it, like it's gonna spoil the twist if you do. You know what? Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do like a little spoilers thing up here. If you've read it or like you don't care about the spoilers, like feel free to listen, and if not, you can skip over this. The story is about a character who has dissociative identity disorder and believes himself to be a man, his own daughter, and his own cat. I just can't fucking read another goddamn story about characters with mental illnesses that are not written by people who have those mental illnesses. I read the author's note at the end, and she was like, I really tried to like come at this with empathy. Like, great! I'm glad you tried to come at this with empathy. That's fantastic. But you still made this character reclusive, weird, not showering often, like unable to interact socially with other people. Like, that's just not... I just cannot stand stories that use mental illness as a plot device in that way. I don't care how empathetic you are. I think it's really telling that people with disordered identity disorder don't write these books. I didn't think the writing was worth me reading it and putting myself through that anyways. But you know what? If you enjoy books where like the plot twist is the thing that you're reading for, fucking go at it. Enjoy this book. You'll probably enjoy it a lot more than I did, and this just isn't a book for me, and that's fine. So we'll move on from that. Now, this one might be a surprise. I DNF'd Velvet Was the Night by Sylvia Moreno Garcia at 59% of the way through. I know. This is a noir set in Mexico City following a very reclusive woman, again, who is looking into her neighbor's disappearance along with an eccentric criminal and some Russian spies. This was the book I picked for my death card poll in last month's Tarot TBR, and the prompt for that is my least read genre. There's a reason crime is my least read genre. God, this book was so boring. I think if you like noirs, this one's fine. I could not have cared less about any of the characters. The only one I did care about was the one who had disappeared, which is kind of a bummer. It just like wholly wasn't my vibe. And on top of that, it just feels like it had too quick of a release date. It could have really used another editing pass. There were a number of errors, like grammatical errors, spelling errors, formatting errors, even like characters' names that weren't even in the room were being used in place of a different character. Like there was a lot of mistakes in it that I was really surprised about, and I haven't seen in her other books that I've read. So something definitely happened with this one. If you want a good noir, one of my favorite noirs that I've ever read is Certain Dark Things, also by Sylvia Moreno Jimeno Garcia, which is why I was like excited to do it again, because if anyone could make me like it, it's her, because she kind of already did that. But that one is about vampires and it's much better. The next book I DNF'd was Payback's a Witch by Lana Harper. I DNF'd this at 27%. This is about a witch who has left her like witchy hometown because of something horrible her ex did to her, and now she's coming back to host some witchy games for the other witches in the town, and she gets roped into a revenge plot by two women who are also screwed over by said ex. The whole purpose of this book is revenge, right? So like obviously Gareth, this guy, must have done something super horrible to her. No, he just broke up with her. Sorry, that might be a spoiler. Why would you leave a town that you clearly love and care about because a boy broke up with you? And honestly, the writing was just really juvenile. It felt like I was reading a YA book, even though it's marketed to adults. And Emmy, who is the main character, was so unlikable and actually very mean to everyone. I thought the revenge plot was really horrible, especially because she's fucking with like her family traditions in order to get back at this boy. And I like, it's technically for her friends, but it's really for herself. And I just didn't like her, and I didn't like the book, and there's probably better witchy revenge books out there, and go find them. The Lunar Cats by Lynn Truss. I got 74% of the way through this, and I read this in my reading instead of scrolling vlog, so I'll link to that guy down below so you can watch the whole review. This is a weird little book about a retired librarian who is off to rescue his dog from a group of evil talking satanic cats hell-bent on taking over the world. So like super fun and weird and silly, right? There were definitely some funny quips at the beginning of this book, but like nothing happened in this book. We spent most of the time rehashing the first book because this is a sequel, but nowhere could I find that information that this was a sequel. Also, I hit like the final act, which was where I stopped reading, and I didn't expect the animal cruelty. I should have, but I didn't, and I just can't do it. Cats don't deserve it. Even evil talking cats do not deserve what I had to read. So yeah, if you like weird little horrors and animal cruelty doesn't bug you as much as it bugs me, go at it. The next book I DNF'd is like BookTube's darling. That is Finlay Donovan is Killing It by El Cosimano. I got 58% of the way through this one. So if you don't know, this book is about Finlay, who is a single mom and an author who is overheard talking about her new suspense novel in a Panera Bread and accidentally agrees to kill a stranger's husband. Chaos ensues. I think this book is good. The characters are fun, the relationships are fun, the situation is fun, like the whole thing is good. Like I can see why people absolutely love this. I DNF'd this because I have to stop reading thrillers. I don't like thrillers. I don't like the structure. The breakneck pace just absolutely bores me to tears. I just can't care about anything when it's just like plot point after plot point, and I did not connect to it at all. This is definitely something I might pick up in the future. Totally try it out if you don't have the same weird thing I have with thrillers. Like try it out because it's very fun. It just wasn't for me. The last one that I DNF that we'll talk about is Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawler. I got 23% of the way through this one. This is about Paul, who is a shapeshifter who transforms themselves at will between different sexual organs and space and size and like the whole 9 yards. And the story is basically just like their experience roaming through life. I really wanted to love this, and I absolutely love the premise, and I love how sexy this book is like almost immediately. And there's absolutely an audience for this book. If you have like ever experienced the feeling of not being comfortable in your own body, especially if you're trans or non-binary and just like don't necessarily relate to the gender that society has pushed on you, I want you to try this book out because I think it's absolutely catered to that audience. And from all the reviews I was reading, people really connected with this. So I think if you're looking for something like that, please try this book out. I didn't connect with it. It's just written in a speculative fiction style that my brain doesn't like it. But this is a book I would definitely go back to. It might just not have been the right time for me, but I absolutely want to spread the word that this book is really lovely and well done and sexy and fun. I didn't read the rest of it, so I can't give you like a full review, but all of the reviews that I was reading were like pretty solid. So look into it. Those are the books I DNF'd. Let's get into all the books that I finished. If any of you have been around for the last, I don't know, a few months, you'll know I've brought up A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara a couple of times. I gave this 2 stars after I immediately read it, and I have bumped it down to 1 star. This is a very long, sad book following 4 college friends through life held together by Jude. It was all over BookTube for a little bit. I only ever saw glowing reviews, but after talking to some friends, it seems a lot more people are talking about how it's just trauma porn, and that is what it is. I want to do something different with this one, and I actually want to read my journal entries as I was reading this book, so you can kind of see my thought process, because I think that will give you a lot more information on the experience of reading this than me just like giving you the same review I've been giving. 29% of the way through, this book is so gorgeous. It's House in the Cerulean Sea on crack, in brackets for adults was the first thing I thought of, but Cerulean Sea is technically an adult book. I feel so strongly for Jude, and I am so emotional about, this is a spoiler, about this thing that just happened. This is the absolute best representation of an adult dealing with childhood trauma. It's so real and grounded. I feel like I'm just watching people go through life. It's amazing. I feel privileged to read this book and thankful to read this book. Oh boy. At 51%, the brilliance of this book is in how it blindsides you. With all the hype, you know this book is devastating and triggering, but you don't expect it to slap you across the face. There's some expectation that a book like this will ease you into the pain, remind you it's just a story. This does not do that. It does not coddle you. It reminds you what life really is, how quickly things can turn. It is beautiful and horrible, a book I wish I could stop reading. I partly wish I had never read it at all. I didn't even fucking know. I know I'm only halfway through at this point, and I am terrified at what is to come. I cannot imagine what the rest of this book is about. I cannot imagine what Jude is going to have to go through. I am devastated. So at 66%, I don't know what I'm going to do when this book is over. How am I supposed to just never read anymore about Willem and Jude? At the same time, I just want to read all day and finish it because I desperately want to know what happens. Ugh. 78%. Jude has like a really bad leg injury. We just discovered how the injury happened, and it is both better and worse than I imagined. There is something about so much trauma in one book that makes it difficult to feel anything after 600 pages. That makes me just grit my teeth and bear it so I can finish. I am both thankful I have the privilege to take in the information and not the emotion, and disgusted that I am actively trying to dissociate from it. I keep thinking, where else can this book go? How long must I endure this? I feel trapped in a never-ending loop of Jude and Willem. I don't know what I'll do when this book is over, especially because I doubt I'll ever read it again. 88%. Here's the downfall. I'm so fucking mad. What the fuck was that? What the fuck? It's a few hours later. I feel betrayed by the spoiler. I haven't thrown a book, in this case a Kindle, across the room in a long time. I haven't been this mad at a book in a long time. Why am I reading this? What's the fucking point? Couldn't she have just ended it when they were happy? Why must I go through more with these characters? Highly considering not finishing it, but I would regret that choice, I think, although frankly I'm regretting reading it at all. And I will read you my full review that I wrote down. I am incandescently enraged at the ending of this book. It feels inappropriate and frankly a little unethical. I cannot deny this is written well, and this would have gotten 4.5 stars from me until the last chapter, which ultimately resulted in the most deliberately hopeless story I have ever experienced. It all could have been redeemed, but it feels like Yanagihara actively made sure we could not take any hope out of the story whatsoever. I would be terrified if someone going through suicidal ideation or a depressive state were to pick up this book. It gets 2 stars because it was beautifully written, which made it all the more deliberately brutal. I'm so fucking mad I spent 3 weeks reading this. That was A Little Life. Don't read it, please. Please, dear God, don't read it. Okay, the next book I read was Something is Killing the Children by James Tynion IV, with Werther Dell'Edera as the illustrator. So this is a horror graphic novel about children disappearing and a badass monster hunter who shows up to take care of it. Erica, who is the monster hunter, is super cool, very like Lisbeth Salander from Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, but I just kept checking to see how many pages were left. I just found it predictable. I didn't really care if anyone died or not, which is not really the vibe for a slasher. So, too bad, so sad. The next book I read was The Residence by Andrew Piper. This got 2.5 stars from me. I read this in my horror reading vlog, so this will be quick. This is a ghost story based on true events set in the White House following President Franklin Pierce and his First Lady, Jane. This book is mostly a moral book. It was released in 2020. It's clearly commenting on like the devil in the White House. And it definitely came out at a pertinent time, and I agree with like all those things that the author is saying. This could have been written in 2010 or set in 2010. I would have no idea. There was absolutely no world building. There was no atmosphere. It was so remarkably unoriginal for something that has such like a kitschy, fun tagline, like ghost story set in the White House. Chaotic, amazing, love it. Bad. If I had kids, I think it would be scarier, maybe, But if you want to read something like that, just go read Pet Sematary. This was just a poor copy of Pet Sematary. Okay. This is also going to be a bit of a rant. I'm going to do my best to keep this rant relatively short. I finally finished this godforsaken fucking book, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. If you love Brandon Sanderson and you like this book, please skip this because I'm going to make you mad. Because I fucking hated this. Hated is a strong word. I literally finished this yesterday because I had to put it in this video. Let me collect myself for a second. This is Sanderson's, the first book in Sanderson's 10-book epic fantasy series following 4 characters, kind of, as they try to halt the end of the world, maybe. This is the most horribly paced book I have ever read. This book did not pick up until after that even. Here. This is about 900 pages of some of the most horrible politicking, boring fight sequences, clunky dialogue, useless information. Trying to explain this book to my partner after I finished it yesterday, I was like, I don't really know any of it because I don't have any information. Because for how many pages is in this book, there is very little actual content. Most of it is just dialogue between characters or thoughts and feelings about events that are going on. It's like he wrote the story before the story starts. You know how usually stories start and then there's a catalyst and then the rest of it happens? Well, that didn't happen. Here, he just wrote 400 to 600 pages of before the catalyst happened. And it is so boring. There are a few super wonderful characters in this and we have so little time with them. We spent 500 pages on a king that is so boring. I had to force myself not to fall asleep reading it. I'm not even kidding. I fell asleep reading this book multiple times. I put off reading it for over a month because it's so horrible. It's so badly written. I don't understand what happened. I like Brandon Sanderson. Warbreaker has been one of my favorite books for a decade. I loved Mistborn. What happened here? I don't think any other writer could get away with writing something like this, except for probably Stephen King. Okay. Beyond the pacing, the characters, our main hero is Kaladin, and God, is he just not the most mopey, moody, little annoying prick. Also, he does something near the end of the book that is completely irredeemable for me. I don't care who you are or what you say. If you are going to be that hypocritical and do something that disgusting, I am not going to root for you. And if you read this, please don't. God, he is Fitz from the Farseer trilogy, if you've read that, by Robin Hobb, but without all of the charm, which makes just an annoying, shitty little baby character. God, I hate him so much. I don't know why we're supposed to root for him. This book felt like I was reading an 80s fantasy, and that is not a compliment. It reminded me a lot of Dune, except Dune is better paced and has actually interesting, well done politics and world building and atmosphere, and I actually understood what was going on. This does not. This has none of that. I really wish this book had ended poorly, because then I could just throw the series away and just not think about it anymore. Unfortunately, the book ended really well. The most boring character, who I had to force myself to read, he was the one that made me cry. The ending brought me enough satisfaction. Not enough that is worth reading this, in my opinion, but enough satisfaction that I do want to continue, and I do want to see where he takes it, because I do care about these characters, and now I've invested fucking 2.5 months of my life to them. I will probably pick up the next one to see if it is any better, but not for 4 to 6 months, because I'm really mad that I spent so much time reading this. I cannot recommend this to anyone. Yeah, it ended well, and yeah, it might be a lot of people's favorite fantasy series of all time. I don't think it's worth reading this much bullshit to get to actual good content. And the fact that it feels like it was written in the 80s, but it was released 10 years ago, ugh, this was a huge disappointment. I don't know if I said this already, but I gave it 2.5 stars. Okay, now we're into 3 stars and up. So all the books from here on out were either good, or fabulous. Summer Suns by Lee Mandello is the next one. I gave this 3.25 stars. This is a Southern Gothic horror about a boy who dies. A boy. They're like young adults. He's a university student who dies, and his best friend goes on a quest through academia to discover what happened to him. I read this with Jem over at Bookish Gems, which was super fun, and she absolutely adored this. It's a 5-star book for her. It's one of her new favorites. This is definitely made for people with specific tastes. It says it's a gothic. It has gothic themes, but it's structured like a thriller. Again, I just don't connect with that kind of structure. And also, I personally had a very hard time caring about the two main characters, Andrew or Eddie. I didn't like either of them. And frankly, I swear to God, 200 pages of this book is just like boys getting hammered in the woods, and I just don't care. It was kind of a slog for me. I actually almost DNF'd it, and then I saw how much Jem was loving it and continued it. I'm glad I finished it. It's kind of forgettable, honestly. I really loved the ghostliness. I loved the actual like spectral supernatural thing. I think if this book had been like a little tighter paced, like cut down maybe just like 50 pages, it would have read a lot better for me. But again, Jem fucking loved it. And if you prefer like a thriller structure with those gothic themes, like you like the faster plot in that way, and you really like ghost stories, definitely give this one a shot, because it was good. It's just like not super for me. The next book I read was 3.5 stars. This is The House of Dust by Noah Broyles. This is another Southern Gothic about a true crime reporter and a prostitute who move into a not so abandoned plantation house in a very creepy little town. This was a very true Southern Gothic. To me, it was very well woven together. All the plot points and the twists were done so well. This is definitely a book like you have to be okay with just having absolutely no idea what's going on for at least half of it. I'm okay with that. I kind of like being confused in that way. I saw a lot of reviews that didn't enjoy that. This book was also so scary, so my partner went on a trip and was gone for a week, and so I was reading it while they were gone, and I had to stop reading it because it scared me so bad. I think that's a really good sign. I really enjoyed it. The reason it only gets 3.5 stars, the second act was a little clunky, and it did kind of wind up being a little forgettable for me. I like where it went. It was a solid, like, spooky, dark gothic that did not go where I expected it to go, and I really liked that. But I'm probably not gonna think about it ever again. But it was fun. Definite warning for animal cruelty. I almost stopped reading it because of it, but then it stopped. So it got to a point where I was like, okay, if there's anything else, like I have to stop. And then it did stop, and that wasn't a thing for the rest of the book. The next book is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. I gave this 3.75 stars. This is a story set in Chinatown in the 50s during the Red Scare paranoia following 17-year-old Lily Hu and her, I want to say like sexual awakening. That's not like really what it is. She discovers that she's a lesbian, and so it's like that experience during this Red Scare paranoia. This is just a truly solid book. Not amazing writing, but it wasn't juvenile, even though it was young adult. It didn't feel like a young adult piece. I was super invested in Lily. The historical atmosphere was wonderful. It was clear that a lot of care was put into this piece, and I really respect it for that. I just think it was like good. It was just like super, like just solid. I would totally recommend this. Anyone who is looking for like a solid to his LGBTQIA plus historical fiction piece, this is a great one to pick up. I like thoroughly enjoyed it. The next one that I hit that was 3.75 stars is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I read this in my 24-hour horror readathon, so go check that out for my full review. This is obviously the iconic haunted house story following Eleanor and the other cast of characters as they move into Hill House to help a scholar uncover a haunting. Well written, concise, oppressive, such an oppressive atmosphere that did so much for me. I found the third act introduction of the doctor's wife really took me out of the story. I hated her. While it brought like a good rush of color to the last little bit that definitely switched up the pacing of it, which I did enjoy. I just wish it had been done differently. But this is definitely something I would read over and over again in a more like academic mindset, like with note cards and stickies and the whole thing, because I feel like I would always get something new out of it. And I would love to read it for class so I could really dissect it, because I think that's what this book is set up for. Now we're just going into the 4 stars. It is just a beautiful stretch all the way to the end. We're gonna talk about another graphic novel. This This is my only like a 4-star book. Everything else is 4.25 or higher. Fables by Bill Willingham, with a bunch of different illustrators, is a graphic novel murder mystery story about fairy tale characters living in present day New York City. This is just fun. The female characters are great. The mystery is good. We all know I am obsessed with fairy tales through and through. And actually, I liked this enough. Oh, it's so heavy. I liked this enough that we actually bought the whole first compendium so that I can read the rest of it without a library book. And like, yay! If you're looking to get into graphic novels, which I was looking to get into, this was just like a good frickin' time. And I'm just excited to read more of it. 4.25 stars. Magic, Lies, and Deadly Pies by Misha Pop. This book was fabulous. This is about a bisexual woman who bakes magical pies. Some of them are very good and give you like a good happy feelings, and some of them kill people. Someone is sending her cryptic notes threatening to reveal her secret if she doesn't murder a particular person. Now, the magic system in this has a lot of specific rules and is kind of complicated, which was really fun. I loved the representation, I loved the mystery, I loved the suspense. You know I love my murderous women, and this was a fabulous iteration of that. It was just like a good time the whole time. It was sweet, it was poignant. I felt like it really approached some wonderful, very timely topics and approached it in a really empathetic, lovely way. It was just great. It was just super fun, and I'm so happy it's a series. I cannot wait to read more. The next piece, we are into all the way 4.5 stars now, so just assume until I tell you otherwise, these are all 4.5 stars or higher. Missing from the Village by Justin Ling. This is a true crime piece about the disappearance of 8 men who were victims of the serial killer Bruce MacArthur from Toronto's queer community, and how the police kind of fucked it all up. This was super well done. I don't read a lot of true crime, but this was very sensitive. It wasn't sensationalist in any way. It really focused on the victims and how they are actual people and not just like victims of a grisly murdering? Is that it's a verb. It's fine. And it also suggested some really nice policy changes at the end. It really felt like it was coming from a place of trying to change things, not just trying to sensationalize a story, which I really appreciated and resonated with. Okay, next I read Near the Bone by Christina Henry, also in that 24-hour readathon. This is about a woman trapped on a mountain with her abusive husband, and she tries to escape. But there is an actual, like, supernatural monster trying to kill people. This is what I imagine thrillers are for everyone else. I don't know why. This just like really worked for me. I could not stop until it was over. It was a great, like very quick, suspenseful read. The ending was earned. The characters likable almost immediately, at least the ones you are supposed to like, and the characters you're not supposed to like, very unlikable immediately. I really liked that I was more scared of the human monster than I was of like the cryptid supernatural monster. It's set in like winter, and even though I was reading it like outside in the sun, I felt cold, like I felt the snow. It was just super immersive and really quick. Definite content warning for domestic abuse and some sexual assault. Be aware this is a heavy read, a very heavy read, but definitely worth the hype. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Then I read Being Lolita by Allison Wood. This is a memoir about Allison Wood's experience being groomed by her teacher as a high school student. This reminded me a lot of My Dark Vanessa, actually, which also relates Vanessa's experience getting groomed by her teacher to Lolita. It was very well written, it was well articulated, it was very sad. It's like impossible to read it and not think of yourself at that age. I remember being 17, and I remember being at a college party when I was still 17. This guy like cornered me against the wall and was like, hey, let me know when you're 18. Like, tell me the second you turn 18. That's fucked up, man. It was really hard for me not to like reminisce about my own experiences with horrible predatory men in that way. My favorite thing that she did that really took it from 4 stars to 4.5 stars for me was she spoke directly to us, the reader, to like give us context, remind us that she's like a kid and she doesn't know any better. I really, really enjoyed that, and I thought it was definitely what made this memoir stand out for me. It also really highlighted the need to teach kids what abuse looks like and our duty to not romanticize these predatory men in other stories as well. So definitely recommend this if you're open to reading it. Obviously, it's super heavy. Same with My Dark Vanessa. I mean, beautiful, wonderful book. I don't think I could ever read it again. I read that and then I had a panic attack after. Definitely recommend them, but go into it with care. Take care of yourself while you're reading these. And to take care of yourself, what better book than Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree? God, this is just the perfect cozy book. This is about Vic, who is a orc barbarian who leaves behind her mercenary life to open up a coffee shop in a sleepy little fantasy town. I loved this. It was great. It was cozy. It was heartwarming. It had a teary ending. It was so sweet. I buddy read this with Fran. I will put her channel along with Gems in the description down below. She's super lovely. We read a lot of books together. If you're just looking for something to make you feel good, this is it. It was just great in every way. It actually reminded me quite a lot of Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, but that with much lower stakes, which made it much less stressful to read. Now, not to knock Whispering Door, I enjoyed Whispering Door too, but this was like just a perfect cozy read. Pick it up. You'll thank me for it. Now we're getting into some weirder books. Siren Queen by Nhi Vo. This is a historical fantasy set during pre-code Hollywood, which was the time where sound was being used in films, but there was no censorship in any way. A wild few years. Luli, our main character, is a Chinese American girl who wants to be a star and will pay with blood to get it. This book is about fairies. This is all fairy lore, but set in historical Hollywood. I loved this. I loved the Tam Lin references. I loved the blood magic. I loved the rules and the tricks. This book does not hold your hand in any way. If you need a fantasy to like spell out what's happening to you in a world building sense, do not read this. You'll not enjoy it. You are thrown in the middle of it and you will either figure it out or you are gonna stop reading it, which I really enjoyed. I love the complexity. And I think I do have a leg up because obviously I'm obsessed with fairy tales. I love fairy lore. So it was like really fun for me to like pick out little pieces of stories that were throughout it. I just thought it was so wonderful. I loved our female lead. She was so complicated and fucked up and great. I loved how detached the horror was. Like, it was really horrific, but from this place of like, well, I'll do anything to succeed. This book is not for everyone. I promise. If you liked Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but wanted it to be dark and twisty and full of blood, this is that book. I adored this. Another one I thoroughly adored, which I've talked about quite a bit recently, is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. It's necromancers in space. Gideon is recruited against her will by her nemesis, Harrowhark Nona Gessimus, to be her sword, her protector in their Emperor's game of deadly skill in space. Oh man, I don't know what I was expecting walking into this book, but what I got was not what I expected, and I'm so happy with what I got. It was chaotic and disturbing and bloody and hilarious. It never took itself too seriously right up until it did, and then it got like really serious, and you're like, oh fuck, God, am I gonna cry? What's going on? The visuals were amazing. It's an LGBTQ book, but it also wasn't a romance. Look, I'm not mad if there would have been a little romance. I kind of wish there was. But like, I also really like just having that representation without it needing to be a romance. Like, that's a lovely step forward. I just loved all of it. I actually have the second one, Harrow the Ninth, from the library, which I plan on reading here very soon. Again, this is a book I did not know what was going on for most of it. There were whole paragraphs of description I just like had to skip over because I did not know what was happening. And I am not mad about it. The whole thing was just a party. Read and enjoy, friends. Now we're into the top tier books. This guy got 4.75 stars. The Witching Hour by Anne Rice. I read this for like almost 3 months. This is Anne Rice's epic Southern Gothic about a family of witches. A very fucked up family of witches. This book fucked me up. Like, when I finished this, I was out of it for the rest of the day. It is disturbing and it is weirdly and horribly sexy and very immersive. Look, this is a chunky book. This shit is dense, okay? You have to be okay to committing to like 500 pages of Mayfair family history. You don't get to move the story forward at all until you get to take care of the history. I loved it. Every line mattered. The patterns throughout time were so wonderful to see. I mean, Anne Rice is a fucking genius. The stakes in the story definitely wouldn't have been nearly as eerie or as high if we hadn't had that history. And like, girl, I love your world building, but there's so much of your world building. So that's the only reason it didn't get 5 stars, even though I think it deserves 5 stars. It's just a long read. Who would I recommend this to? If you already trust Anne Rice and this is on your radar, go for it, please. If you're looking for like a chunky, immersive read that will take you a lot of time, that you just want to like sink your teeth into, that's ominous without being super gory, this is a good one. There are some serious content warnings for this. If you do decide to pick it up, please look at them. I looked at them and I was not prepared for the extent of things. Just be aware of going into this. This family is not okay. But it's very good. It's super, super good. God, she's so good at writing. It's just ridiculous. Pick it up if you dare, I guess. That's so ominous. Moving on. We are into the 5 stars. Libby came in clutch for me, and I was able to get I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy on a Skip the Line audiobook loan. And holy shit, and am I glad I got to listen to it as an audiobook. If you have the opportunity, please read it that way. If you don't know, Jeanette McCurdy was in iCarly. She played Sam, and it is a memoir about her experience growing up with her narcissistic mom and her struggles in a very unwanted acting career. She very skillfully weaves like the eating disorder brain, the manipulation from her mom, and the horrors of the acting world into a memoir that like resonated a lot with me. I know I've seen reviews that are like, I don't know why so many people are liking this. I think if you haven't really gone through a lot of the things that she's gone through, you won't resonate with this as much, and that's okay, and that's a good thing, and I'm happy for you. I did, and I thought it was wonderful. Please read the audiobook. Listening to her speak about her life experiences, it's my favorite way to read memoirs anyways, but in this in particular, God, there's a couple of times throughout it where her voice like breaks as she's talking about something, and that like broke my heart more than anything else did. I highly recommend this. Again, please read this with care. It's got a very, very descriptive eating disorder stuff, content warning in there, and some other things, including manipulation and abuse and gaslighting and like a lot of those things. So just like be aware going into it, but I loved it. I think it deserves the hype, and I want her to write more books because she's very good at like weaving stuff together in a way that resonates with an audience. The next was a nonfiction. I've talked about this one before. This is Disfigured on Fairy Tales, Disability, and Making Space by Amanda LeDuc. So this book is examining fairy tales' influences on our expectations and experiences towards disabled people, from like OG Brothers Grimm all the way up to today's Disney. First off, this is a must read for all you weirdos on my channel who also enjoy fairy tales as much as I do. Beyond that, it gave a lot of context to some fairy tales and like why they were being shared at the time that they were being shared. I just felt like I learned so much. I have a lot more to learn about the disabled community, but this was a wonderful place to start. It was just fantastic. She very successfully put like fairy tales and discussion to her readers and her own like memoir, like life experience. She put it all together in a way that was just like really easily digestible. I just really liked it. I read Snowglass Apples by Neil Gaiman with the absolutely stunning illustrations by Colleen Doran. Woman, you are amazing. This is a graphic novel retelling of Snow White from the perspective of the evil queen. And it's a horror. I loved the spin on the story. I loved the horror. I loved how cerebral it was. The illustrations are like obsession worthy. The style is just gorgeous. I would read this over and over again just so I can experience it again. And it's more fun because it's the evil queen. So like, even though she's technically the protagonist, she's also still an unreliable narrator. And so like things that are happening, you're like, girl, I think you're lying to us. I just love the experience of reading it. Damn, I've read a lot of really good books. Okay. New favorites of all of my go-to genres. Horror comes first. If you watched my horror 24-hour vlog, you know what book this is. It Will Just Be Us by Jo Kaplan. Man, this is a gothic horror about 2 sisters, a haunted house that never sleeps, and a faceless boy who commits more and more disturbing acts as the story progresses. This is the best haunted house story I've ever read. It had an ominous atmosphere. It twisted haunted house tropes on its head. The combination of like supernatural horror and like human horror, unparalleled. Phenomenal. And the thing I really liked about it is like it kind of lulls you into this false sense of like things are gonna be okay. You know, we might have some losses, but like it's gonna work out. And then when you realize what's actually going on, it gets so much worse, and you're just like reading in dread until you get to the end. And the final image in the epilogue, like I could have slept okay until the epilogue. And that image is literally never gonna leave my brain. I have to like actively like put it in a little box and put it away. It was just like perfectly horrible. Oh God, please read this book if you like horrors. I adored this. And then tell me that you've read it. Oh, I just want to talk about this with more people. It was so good. Okay. Next, we're gonna talk really quickly. You're probably all fucking tired of me talking about this. Oh, Robin Hobb. I finally finished the Farseer trilogy, so I read Assassin's Quest and Royal Assassin. This is the story of Fitz, who is a young boy, a young little magical boy, trying to survive in a world that is consistently trying to kill him. That's like such a stupid gist of the story. They are such empathic books. I love the emphasis on the relationship between humans and animals. Her world building is flawless. This is a very character-focused narrative. If you don't like slow-paced character work, you're probably not gonna vibe with it. The thing about it that really gets me, I have never so strongly felt like a character was real. Fitz feels like a real person that I want to call on my phone and yell at for being a fucking idiot. He's not stupid. He's not ignorant. He's not like obtuse in any way. He's just like kind of oblivious, and there's so much going on in his life that things just like slip by him, and then he does something stupid and he's like, why are they mad at me? You reading the book is like, Fitz! Wake up, look around. But you can't really be mad at him because he's got so much going on. These books are so sad and they're so good, and the characters are so like wholesome, and I just want to hug them and shake them. It's so good. There's wolves and animals. If you're an animal lover, look, it's going to be kind of hard to read, but it's absolutely worth reading. I really love these books. They're absolutely my new favorite fantasy series. I don't think I've ever really experienced storytelling that is so incredibly empathic in the way that this is. It's not like the most beautiful prose on the planet. Like, it's not like she's using a lot of metaphors. She's not doing anything like really crazy or particularly special. It's very simple prose that I think is really accessible. It's just honest and human. I just think she is an absolute master. I can't wait to read the rest of what she has to say because I just adore every little bit of it. I just think they're so absolutely worth spending the time on. Going from reading Assassin's Quest and then picking up Way of Kings again, this is like child's writing. Like a monkey wrote this in comparison to how beautiful this is. It just gets to your heart, you know? There's just something about it. I just really love it, guys. That's all I have to say about it. I just fucking love it. And we're gonna talk about 2 more books that I absolutely fucking loved. So let's get into them. This might be one of my new favorite books of all time. It's absolutely my new favorite contemporary literary piece. Disorientation by Elaine Say Chu. Fuck, man, this is so good. It's so good, I tabbed it. I don't fucking do that with books that's not for English class. Fuck, my battery's gonna die. No, I'm so close to the end. So this is about a Taiwanese American PhD student, Ingrid Yang, who is trying to finish her dissertation on a Chinese poet that she does not care about. She stumbles across a very weird little note in the archives, and shit gets absolutely wild. I literally, like, I feel like I don't have words for how much I loved this book. It was absolute chaos. It was truly hilarious. Every word was essential. Every point is sharp. Like, the whole thing was written on purpose. Like, everything was purposeful. And I just adored it. Literally, things get so crazy in this fucking book that you'll wonder if Ingrid is hallucinating again, and I do mean again, or if, like, the thing is actually happening. Also, fuck Stephen. God, I hate Stephen. Oh my God, you either have dated Stephen or you know someone who's dated Stephen, and I hate Stephen. It's really about like the experience of Ingrid trying to understand her relationship to whiteness. And a lot of it is her just trying to like understand a lot of the things that maybe you or I might take for granted, like activism lingo, LGBTQIA+, or acknowledging that we are on Indigenous land. Like, you know, a lot of things that feel normal to a lot of people now It's about her like learning why we do that in the first place. It was so wonderful and specific and honest, and just, it was just such a lovely, flippin' little experience. And I want everyone to read it. Like, I was talking to myself while I was alone in my apartment because I loved this book so much. If you pick up any book in this fucking list, pick up this one. I think it has the most to share. It is the most current, and I love it. I love it. Okay. The last book we're going to talk about, I promise this is the last one. Holy shit, this is a long video. The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern is my new favorite book of all time. This is a portal fantasy about Zachary, who is a grad student who discovers a mysterious book in the library that leads him into another world. And with the help of the pink-haired rebellious Mirabelle and the sexy Dorian, they try together to save the world and the stories it represents. We love when our camera dies and overheats at the same time when you're like literally 2 minutes from finishing your video. This book is so lovely. It is like 90% vibe and like 10% actual plot, but like in a good way. If I could pick a book that I would just like crawl into and never come out, like Inkheart style, it would be that one. The atmosphere is so gorgeous and the writing is so whimsical, and I just love Erin Morgenstern's style. I just think she really caters to what I look for in books, which is a very character-heavy, atmospheric kind of writing. I am devastated to find now I have read both of her books that are released. Can we just all harass her to release the next one so we can get more books from her? Because God, I love her writing so much. The Night Circus similarly was just like so stunning. It is just the most like all-encompassing, heartwarming story that just makes you love reading even more. This one is like the pinnacle of all books about books. I just love it. I just think it hits a very specific, nostalgic, happy part of my being, and I want everyone else to experience it as well. If you love stories as much as I do and you're here, and if you've watched all the way to this end, you must love stories as much as I do. So I want you to read this book as much as I want to read all of the books that I put on my TBR for September. So that is the end of the summer wrap up. Please go and check out my tarot TBR for September, which is right up here. We've got some academia books, we've got some spooky books. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of this so long video. Please tell me your thoughts. I love talking about books with you all. Thank you so much for being a part of this channel, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Happy reading.